Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and welcome to part 4 in a series of videos where we're taking the NCAA basketball programs across the country and we are doing an imperialism, meaning that we are going to pick one of these at random, then they're going to fight someone that's near them, and whoever wins takes their land. And we're going to do this until there's one team remaining. This is part 4 of that series, so if you are looking to watch part 1 or the start of this series, please check out my channel. I'll also leave a link in the description below for part 1. Um, yeah, this is what the map looks like so far. There's many more matchups that we're going to have before we start narrowing down even to the closest top 100. Before we get into that, I just want to say a huge thank you for anyone that's been watching and following. Um, I, I'm a new YouTuber for the most part, so any likes or subscribes that you have, it's wonderful that if you can do that. And again, as long as you're liking the content, I appreciate any of the feedback that you have. So, with that in mind, let's get ourselves going. So let's determine who we got coming up next here. And our first matchup of today is USC Upstate Spartans. And which direction is this team going to attack? They're going to go to the west, a little bit southwest. And that's kind of tough to figure out because USC Upstate has this little piece of land right here going mostly west but a little bit south. I think is going to put them against UNC Asheville, the Bulldogs right here. So that's our first matchup of the day. And it looks like the Bulldogs are the team to win here. Note that the game was relatively close throughout most of it, but then later in the second half, UNC Asheville started to pull away and eventually got a reasonable win, a win by 11 points. And the main thing to note here is, yes, this isn't a big piece of land, but what this means for the Bulldogs is that they get to stay around and stick around for a little bit longer, which is the main part of the game, right? Stay around as long as possible, and maybe you can get to the end. So back to the wheel here. Let's keep her going. Our next matchup takes us to Central Arkansas. And they're going to start attacking in a westerly direction as well, which means, as them being central to Arkansas here, they're going to go up against the Arkansas Razorbacks. That's going to be a tough matchup. And as expected, Arkansas did come away with the win, although it took them a while to actually get a lead. As they took a lead, Central Arkansas took some time back, but then Arkansas put on the gas pedal and eventually made a comfortable 15-point gap to win the game. And like that, Arkansas takes the Razorbacks take a big chunk of Arkansas and see them exert their dominance over the state. But we can't rest on that. We got to keep going. And let's see what we get. We get UNC Asheville. I think that's the first time I've seen where um, we've had one happen and then so quickly we go back to the same team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe West Virginia was like that too. But again, we're going back to the Bulldogs. But this time the Bulldogs are on the attack and they're going to go to the northeast, which when we look at the map here makes it pretty close because of this little piece right here that we might end up playing this team. But I think in general, northeast means we're going to play Appalachian State. And just like that, the Mountaineers get to expand. Wasn't really a contest after all, as Appalachian State led for basically the whole game, other than 1 point early in the game, and won fairly comfortably, almost by 20 points. And sometimes you're up like you were before, but unfortunately UNC Asheville, you're off the map here, and Appalachian State is the beneficiary. And we keep going. We've had a couple battles in North Carolina here, but now we go out west. to California. And so with California, we can't go west. So if there's any other direction, we would change it, but in this case, we're going north. And what that means for California is they're going to go up against San Francisco from the West Coast Conference. And it is San Francisco that wins in a very strong fashion. I know that they did well and made the NCAA tournament last year, but that shows here as they were never behind in this game, right? And eventually winning by 21 points. And just like that, California is off the map, and San Francisco gets a bigger piece of the Bay Area. And here we go again, back to the spinner. And we go to Nicholls State. And if you're not sure where Nicholls State is, it's in southern Louisiana, so we just can't go south, but we can try to go east from there, which would mean that Nicholls State is then going to go up against Tulane. And look at this, a back and forth game with Nicholls State pulling out the victory at the end. Tulane had a lead going into most of the first half. Then it was back and forth the whole time with Nicholls State getting the last laugh here and winning against Tulane. What a matchup. And just like that, Nicholls State has expanded their territory in southern Louisiana. Look at them go. And we're back to the wheel once more to see where we're headed next. And it looks like we're going to see Oral Roberts Golden Eagles in action. And they're going to end up going and trying to expand to the northwest. And northwest from where their logo is actually touches on Wichita State. So Wichita State is getting invaded by Oral Roberts. And unfortunately for the Golden Eagles, that is where their journey ends, as Wichita State handily takes care of Oral Roberts and gets to expand once more. And like that, Wichita State continues their pressure into Oklahoma. I think this is now the second team that they have taken in the state of Oklahoma, right? I think they took out the Cowboys, Oklahoma State. Now they've taken out Oral Roberts. And away we go again, back to the wheel, where we were in Oklahoma. Now we head to Ryder, the Bronx of Ryder University. And they are going to attempt to conquest in a northerly direction. And according to our map, with Ryder being situated here, because we've had to kind of fit some extra teams in the Philadelphia area, Ryder going north is going to go against the Lafayette Leopards. And it is Lafayette that come out as the victors. And pretty handily. There wasn't really a point where Lafayette was losing in this game, and gets to pick up a little bit of land to go with it now. And just like that, the Leopards have expanded their territory just a little bit by defending against Ryder. And again, there's not a lot of land to take here, but you could bulk up pretty quickly if you took the right person. And I forgot to hit record on the last one here, but I'm leaving the result up here. The next spin we had here was actually the USC Trojans. And USC is going to try to conquest in a northwest direction, which means that, and I'm going to play it as going northwest, avoids UCLA, and they're going to take on the Cal State Northridge Matadors. And maybe a closer game than what people would think, but the Trojans did make sure that they ended up the victors by a 12-point lead. And so USC probably gets one of the most funkiest borders so far by taking over, some probably more than double their land. Or I guess they've doubled their land. So back to the spinner here. We go one more time. and see what we get. Looks like we're going to Western Kentucky, as Western Kentucky are going to start their conquest going south, well, more like southeast, which means that West Kentucky are going to face Tennessee Tech. So I think Golden Eagles of Tennessee Tech. And it is Tennessee Tech that defend their territory against Western Kentucky and do it in a pretty dominant fashion. It was a close game with Western Kentucky taking the lead in the first half, but Tennessee Tech just soared away from them, creating the decisive win. And Tennessee Tech have now taken a much bigger chunk of Kentucky and keeps their presence on the board. So back to the board we go, or the spinner we go. And it looks like we're headed to see Robert Morris, as Robert Morris are going to start their conquest going almost directly south, which is tough to tell based on the weird borders that Robert Morris has. But if it was south and a little bit east, as the arrow is pointing, it puts us to Duquesne. So Robert Morris trying to invade Duquesne. And it looks like it's the Duquesne Dukes that are going to take the win on this one. Wasn't much of a contest, as Duquesne took an early lead and kept that lead throughout the entire matchup. So Duquesne gets a chance to expand pretty heavily. And that means Duquesne has a pretty big piece of land now. Do apologize if the red clashes with the red from Youngstown, I think, or Youngstown University. Sorry, I do apologize if I don't know every single name of the college programs, but Duquesne's got a lot of extra pieces here, a little bit of Ohio, a little bit of West Virginia, and they've got a nice piece of land now. So back to the spinner we go. 300 teams still left, which means we've got a lot of ways to go, and we're heading to the West Coast as we go see Portland. Now, as long as we don't get west here, we'll say that it's a valid spin. And going to the northeast is where Portland is going to travel. Now, this is tough to determine, but I'm going to have to go by middle of the map and going northeast from there, which means it still hits the area of the Seattle Redhawks. So it'll be Portland against Seattle University. And I do apologize as the Seattle logo didn't show up, but Seattle is the team that gets a substantial win against the Portland Pilots. And just like that, we end up having a big piece of land taken on the West Coast. And now we see Seattle being a nice big red blob in the Pacific Northwest. But on and on we go. One more matchup as we keep going here. And we run into the College of Charleston College of Charleston Cougars. Now, this is a East Coast team, so we will accept any spin that's not directly east. We'll take south. We'll see what south gives us. And south doesn't really give us an exact description here, so we're going to say south along the coast, which means they are facing, I didn't look up this team. Who are they facing here? They're going to be facing the Charleston Southern Buccaneers from the Big South Conference. And in pretty dominating fashion, Charleston Southern ends up beating the College of Charleston. I don't know, I wonder if there's anyone from that region, if that's a huge rivalry or not. But Charleston Southern takes the win pretty definitively. And with that, the Buccaneers get a little bit more coastline from taking out their Charleston rivals. But it doesn't stop there. Where are we headed next? The VMI Cadets. Or should I say Keydets? I'm actually not sure about that one. They're going to then travel to the southwest And southwest from VMI means they're going to have to face Virginia Tech. And as expected, Virginia Tech takes down VMI pretty handily and gets a reward of their first piece of land. And like that, Virginia Tech picks up a nice piece of land. What might be concerning, though, is that now they definitively border West Virginia, which could end up being a huge matchup that comes up later on. And back to the wheel we go. Where are we headed? We're back to Virginia Tech. Wow, that's incredible that we're already back there. Am I going to be prophetic in saying they're going to face West Virginia, or are they going to go in a different direction? They are going southeast, which southeast from their approximate middle of their logo would take us to face against Liberty. And for Liberty, this is a huge win for them. Liberty go out and they beat Virginia Tech by a pretty substantial score. It was close throughout most of the first half, but Liberty eventually took a lead and never squandered it, eventually beating Virginia Tech by 12 points. And just like that, Liberty takes a big chunk of land from Virginia Tech, and I've chosen to update their logo here, and so it's nice, big, and visible in their new piece of land here. So look at that. Good job, Liberty. So back to the wheel again. Where are we headed next? Looks like we're going to Furman, as Furman is going to try to expand, going to the west, which means Furman here is going to have to take on the Clemson Tigers. And it ended up being a pretty close game, even though Clemson never gave up their lead. But that's not a big win, but a win is all that you need in this game to pick up some more land. And just like that, Clemson gets its first little piece of extra land as it expands a little further into South Carolina. And we're back at it again, seeing where we go from here. And going to the lovely state of Iowa, as northern Iowa decides to venture a little bit further east, maybe a little bit southeast, which a little bit southeast from where northern Iowa is in the middle of their logo does kind of touch the tip of the Iowa Hawkeyes. So we're going to then have an Iowa battle here, where northern Iowa is going to take on the Iowa Hawkeyes. And this matchup ended up being really close. Northern Iowa led for most of the game, but as it got into the later stages of the second half, Iowa did take one of their first leads of the game and did just enough to hold them off, creating a 3-point cushion at the end to get the victory and their first piece of land. And just like that, Iowa, the Hawkeyes, have stated their claim on the state of Iowa and taken a big chunk of it, right? With only a few teams really left to lay claim to the state. But once again, back at the wheel here. We've got a lot of East Coast teams, I feel like. Are we staying there? Yes, and we're going down to Florida to see the Seminoles, as Florida State get their first chance to expand their territory by going west and maybe even a little bit northwest, as Florida State will try to take on Troy. And once again, an ACC team is knocked out as Troy does very well to defend their territory and win by 5. And most of the whole game they were leading as well, which is very impressive by that team. And just like that, Troy, with the upset, pulls off a great game and ends up taking a good piece of land as they expand into Georgia and a little bit more into Florida. Now we have time for probably one more matchup for this video. Let's see who we get. We get the Indiana State Sycamores, as they will get a first chance to expand as they try to move west. But in their way to the west is the Eastern Illinois Panthers. And it is Eastern Illinois that is able to defend their territory. Did look like they were up for most of the first half. They did lose their lead as it was around halftime, but Eastern Illinois came back and maintained their lead to defend their territory and expand a little bit into Indiana. And Eastern Illinois gets to take a big chunk of Indiana and expand their territory to the east. And so once again, this is what the map looks like at the end of the video. I know in some cases where it doesn't seem like there's a big change, but teams like Troy, teams like Tennessee Tech, Wichita State, and Liberty certainly have made some gains along with Seattle and others. But that is the end of the video today. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. That always helps to just get more views and people seeing my channel. So I am going to be back for parts in the future. So yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.